You'll be like watching the game and like their group chat's going off because it's like something crazy just happened. You go on Instagram or TikTok and Overtime's already posted a clip of it happening. How big is this content team? Are they 24/7?
Overtime Tom can really give you the secret sauce on it. He's built an incredible team on the social front and has a community team and what he calls the game coverage team. We have someone ready to go that's posting or talking or in the discussion, and our employees and our social team talent are witty, they understand our audience, they talk like our audience. That's always been a priority and a point of pride.
Welcome back to another episode of Chew on This. Today we have Tyler, who's Chief Brand Officer and Head of Commerce at Overtime. For a few of you who may have not been consuming any content on Overtime, somehow living under a rock, it's one of the most viral sensations in terms of content, whether it comes for sports or any type of media that you're looking at. And they've also have an interesting business when it comes to commerce and what they're doing with their web end, as well as sponsorships and partnerships. So Tyler's here to break it down, what they've been doing, what they're working on, and maybe what they're going to be getting into in the future. So Tyler, first of all, thank you so much for coming, and give the audience a little bit about you and a little bit more about Overtime too.
Awesome. I'll try my best to break down the business as much as I can. Overtime is primarily three things. We are a sports media platform, 100 million followers across all of our platforms. Second, we are now what we say in the sports IP creation business. We have our own leagues, Overtime Elite, our basketball league, Overtime Select, which is our women's basketball league, OT7, our 7-on-7 football league, and then we just launched boxing a year ago called OTX. OTE is probably the one most people have heard of. It's on Prime Video. We have an arena in Atlanta. It feels like an esports arena meets Rucker Park. And we've had 4 of the top 10 draft picks in the past 2 years in the NBA. So it's been making a big splash. And then thirdly, we have our commerce business and our apparel, and we've really created a lifestyle brand, and we've continued to grow, year over year in such a good way and do a lot of great partnerships across the board there. And it's also fueled the larger part of our business as well.
That's so cool.
My background is primarily, I've only worked at 2 companies my entire life, Adidas and Overtime, and spent a long time at Adidas, almost 9 years, Chicago, Portland, Germany, and New York, and then jumped over to Overtime, where we do a ton of work with Adidas today. So life comes at you full circle, work with a lot of my great friends and colleagues from before as well. And yeah, I jumped into the Overtime business, knew from the get-go that this was a big opportunity, had a ton of upside, and Dan, our CEO and founder, was just like, we're in the dreams business. There's a ton of potential that we can do here. And I was primarily tasked with helping launch our e-commerce brand and business when I first started. Didn't really have an e-commerce background, but slowly tried to learn and build a good team around me, a great team, and here we are.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Before we even jump in, I just want to do a quick rapid fire. Your favorite sports teams?
Favorite sports teams? Miami Heat. So,
wow, man.
Yeah, Miami Heat is my favorite team growing up. I grew up in Sunrise, Florida.
Okay.
Also grew up during, of course, Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning and Dan Marley era, but then I was blessed with a few championships with Dwayne Wade, LeBron, Shaq, Zo, all of those guys together. And then anything Gators. I'm a University of Florida Gator, so had a couple national championships as a student on the basketball and football front as well. So
there we go.
Those are primarily my two or so teams.
You didn't say Dolphins.
Dolphins, I never really got behind. I'm not a huge NFL guy either,
cool,
but I just like tune into the big stories, and I don't really get upset on winning or losing either way. I just want to see like the best moments happen.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Were you at Florida when Joakim and the boys were?
Yeah, I had just started as a freshman when they went off, and then I had the good Tebow era as well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
God, I don't even want to sit here anymore.
It was fun.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
It was a good time to be there.
Before we even jump in, a little about you. Like, what's your craft? What's really your background, and how'd you get into that? How'd you get into Adidas with that craft, and then what are you doing differently here at Overtime that's that's kind of utilizing what you do best?
Yeah, I mean, I was a journalism major at Florida,
Okay.
Which was all writing and storytelling. And I've tried to take that into all the different things that I love, which loved sneakers as a kid. So great to jump into a career on all the things you loved as a kid.
Yeah.
Sneakers, basketball, went into Adidas basketball, worked on marketing, merchandising, and product for a while. And then just kind of understood what all of that meant and just always try and have the best understanding of the consumer and kind of always think about like would I love it, of course, but also does our audience really love it? And then when we were building out Overtime, it was really like, how are we going to make this a lifestyle brand and bigger than just a media company? And what are all the touch points that we need to do and deliver against that make it feel special and make it feel differentiated? There's a lot of media companies that do merch, and we really were like, we're going to take a really different approach to doing so. And I think that's paid off in terms of just our growth, our retention, our reorders, and our ability to just get some amazing collaborations across the board. I know we were talking about SpongeBob for their 25-year anniversary earlier. Just the ability and the opportunity that we have to work on some of world-class IP has really come with how much care we've put into the brand, and all the messaging has been on point and consistent. We work with, probably no one signed more NIL deals than us. We obviously had like a head start in the space, but we have a complete ecosystem, right? And that's what I'm always trying to create. Like, what is our ecosystem? We have leagues with our own athletes. That's great. We have our own talent and influencers like Overtime Megan, and we work on shows with someone like Nelson, who's an amazing basketball creator. We bring in different talent to broadcast our games like AMP and Kai Cenat. Those are other ways that you kind of just bring more energy, more fandom, and more authenticity to what our audience actually is craving, and a different way of consuming sports, which is what we've always tried to be. And when that happens and that brand love is created, like, then it's a completely different feeling and experience, right? To get your wallet out and actually purchase that t-shirt and want to wear it. But we've done a lot of work and understanding and talking with our customers or consumers and really learning and understanding that. And I think the biggest thing we did, which might have had the best payoff, was we started making shows. And those shows had Zion Williamson and all the guys that you know that are in the NBA now. And they would wear an Overtime t-shirt or an Overtime hoodie. And no one else had that. It was only the guys on our shows. And we never sold it. And then we started getting, for a whole year, we didn't sell it. Wow. And we started getting all these DMs. And we respond to 90% of our DMs. So we try and be a community. But we never sold it. We got so many requests and asked for it. And then we were like, okay, the demand is here. This could be a part of our revenue strategy as well. And we started to then do drops on a monthly basis, new colors, all that sort of industry tried and true methodology that you know about, right? And so we started doing that, but we already had this sort of built up demand where the Overtime hoodie was like the varsity jacket of the high school hallway. Yeah. And we've tried to really like continue to refine that, and of course stay fresh, stay exciting, and have newness and bring new energy to a lot of different areas.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, especially for like our listeners who primarily running e-commerce businesses, and in different phases of their life, right? Either someone starting or thinking of an idea to, there's plenty of people who have 9-figure businesses. I'm curious, like, when you guys look at your e-commerce business, right? How much of it is like treated as its own, like, hey, we have to have our own paid media and marketing that's going to drive customers, and what's our CAC look like, and, you know, are we profitable on the order, versus like how much of it is like, you know what, it's going to sit here in the middle while we have this entire, you know, massive content engine that's going to funnel people there, and whatever sales come from it is our engine. Curious on like how you guys position that e-commerce front.
It's a blend, I would say. We treat it like a real business that has to have a margin and has to deliver a profit. And in some cases, it fuels the other aspects of our business. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, too, we have this gray area where we look at our apparel as a marketing ploy, too, right? Kids or people wearing our hoodie or our t-shirt out and about is the best form of marketing that we can ever create, no matter how many followers we have or how much engagement this one post might garner, right? Yep. And so we understand that, and so there is some gray area to it. Like a traditional commerce or e-commerce business might have, okay, for this quarter I have X open to buy. We have a little bit more flexibility around that, right? Because we're receiving revenue from all different areas, and that's, we have a different sort of cash flow model, I would say, than just your, hey, this is the one thing that we do as a company, because we do so many different things.
Yep.
But on the other side too, our content team, they are sort of, their whole model is advertising, right? And so they'll get a Nike, an Adidas, a Gatorade, a client, and they have to service that client through a media plan and a marketing plan and what these custom content pieces look like. We are in some cases treated as a client, even internally, like, hey, we have this drop coming, let's call it SpongeBob, or a collaboration, or just our own apparel, like this sweater right here. And how are you treating us as a client and delivering the brand and making it happen on TikTok Shop now, or Overtime Kicks is the largest sneaker account on TikTok. How are we going to drop our own sneakers, which we just did this past week as an example. So there's a lot of different ways that you could slice it and dice it, and it's a little bit of the traditional model, but everything we also try and do is pretty untraditional. Yeah.
It's really cool. Just to go back to that SpongeBob kind of, I guess, licensing, collaboration, partnership, there's a lot of apparel companies that come to us, and just, companies in general, and they always ask, how do you reach out or make those partnerships come to fruition? And you were there from almost the very beginning, so I'm sure you didn't have all those partnerships right when you got there. What was the kind of the methodology in getting those partnerships?
Everyone, I always say this, every single partnership happens differently.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it's your network.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the last role that I had at Adidas was the fashion and style collaborations team. So that is all partnerships, right? With either an up and coming designer or an amazing fashion house or a musician, right? And so that kind of world all is pretty insular and everyone knows one another. Now we're pretty much on everyone's radar. It also has the league, OTE specifically, has been a catalyst for collaborations, in the sense that I would say everyone wants a jersey as a partnership, and like Kith has the New York Knicks as a great example. And so not every brand's going to get an NBA team, but we can fully customize because we own our league end to end, including the teams. And so you can work with us and bring your IP to life in ways that no brand guideline book is ever going to let you, truly. And
Fair
so
point.
I've tried to be imaginative in that regard to the utmost way we can for what our audience would like. And so different partnerships come from either friends, a network, a good introduction, a great reputation, or just full on, let's reach out. Let's think like this would be a great idea to put our twist on it. And we know our audience already loves it. Yeah. And so we work with so many Fortune 500 companies already across all the different things we do. And so some of this just falls into my inbox, but some of it I go out and I chase.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I have like more of a selfish question, because I've always wondered this.
It's all gonna be selfish.
Be selfish.
Yeah. When it comes to like moments that happen on like an NBA game, okay, and you'll be like watching the game, and like their group chat's going off because it's like something crazy just happened, and like within 15 to 30 seconds, you go on Instagram or TikTok, and Overtime's already posted a clip of it happening, okay? Yep. And it'll be like 10:23 p.m. on like a Tuesday night. Like, I don't need your org chart, but like, how big is this content team? And are they 24/7? Because like there's sports happening internationally. Like, you guys talk about it all. It's insane. And again, I know content engines are there, but like I'd love to get an understanding of like how this works.
Yeah. Overtime, Tom can really give you the secret sauce on it, but kudos to him. He's built an incredible team on the social front and has a community team and what he calls the game coverage team. And typically, I would say for every game, we have someone ready to go that's posting or talking or in the discussion. And typically, like our employees and our social team talent are are witty. They understand our audience. They talk like our audience. That's always been a priority and a point of pride. And Tom not only has a game coverage team in that sense from a digital standpoint, he also has a game coverage team that goes to gyms, and in some cases an NBA game, but like we're in high school gyms. We're in a lot of places that no corporate company is.
So not
typically
all those
going
videos
to.
are just submitted by users because they're like real time sometimes.
We
So
have a network of
that's
iPhone
cool.
filmers, and we're an iPhone filming company,
Yeah.
right? We're doing that for video. Of course, we have 4K polished cameras for our arena because that's broadcasts on
Right.
Amazon and all of that stuff. But yeah, so that's a bigger part of the social team, and it's a good part of our secret sauce for sure. And we're keeping that going.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I even remember like you guys had some posts where like you guys were writing some stuff that felt unhinged, right? And I think people were commenting like, who the hell's running this account? Like it was like at 11 p.m. at night and someone was like, overtime's drunk. And it was just like, it's so funny though, because it's just so great. It's
So
great.
I love it so much when it happens. I've been with Tom when it's happened a few times. And I think a lot of people comment like admin has been hacked or stuff like that.
Yeah.
They think we're hacked. They think we're drunk.
Yeah.
It all started actually during the pandemic, and we called it more or less, I think, Overtime After Dark.
Okay.
And it was when, of course, like there was no live sports, but we had a bunch of pre-recorded content, and we were really the only ones in that space that were covering more of the lighthearted moments and cultural moments anyway. We weren't necessarily, we don't have any media rights to cover all the professional sports games anyway, right? So we've been making our own content from the jump. And so sometimes after dark, let's say, we would post a bunch of weird things, whether it's like the pimple popping stuff, that it's some of the most engaged content we have. But yeah, we just like, the best part about Overtime from a social standpoint in many ways is that it's really personified, and our audience feels like they know who's running the accounts and they know their name and they've talked to them before, and you can't really replicate that or find that in other brands. And I think that's super important because that's what this audience sort of loves, that personal connection. Or they're in their room, right, and they're just by themselves, but they're like, oh, that must be Tom, like he must have been hacked, like this is crazy. And or like we get equally I thought this was a sports account, unfollow you know, but we love that because like,
And most of them aren't.
if we're not if we're not polarizing to a degree, like are we really doing a good job?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's take it back to kind of something you guys pride yourselves on, which is your design in general. And the product's phenomenal. Everything looks super pristine, but your packaging, your kind of open box experience, tell me about that and tell me how you set yourself apart from what your competitors do.
Yeah, we've taken a lot of pride, even from the very, very beginning when I talked with Dan about this role and this business vertical and should we start it. We said, okay, we're going to be a full journey and have like the full consumer touch points across everything, be very polished. And that starts with our packaging. So when you receive our order, it comes with like a super colorful bag. It's got some of our design work all over it. We've seen TikToks and Instagram posts, especially during the holidays, where they've seen the Overtime bag stand out underneath the Christmas tree, and they're like, "Oh shit! Like this is gonna be the best gift I get all Christmas." And so that's important, right? We see that, and we know like people are using our bags for other things, just outside of obviously like you get it, you discard it typically. And then the other thing we just started doing, we used to do just a card insert that said welcome to the family, tag us at Overtime Fits, which is primarily our social handle for all of our apparel and design work. And then recently, I'm glad you asked because I brought it, we just launched and brought this as our new insert. And I don't think any other company is doing this. It's an athlete credential. Quite simply, it has a QR code or a flow code, I should say, that is dynamic, but also just goes right to our website. And the insight really there was I was walking around all of our leagues, OTE, OT7, and going to different events. And all you would see is all these athletes with 20 of these on their backpack. Yeah. And it really was a proof of I'm a D1 athlete, or I'm being heavily recruited by all these NCAA universities, and I've been on a visit. And here's all my visits. And so it's a cool badge of honor, and it's something different. And I was like, you know what? This was an extension of wearing the Overtime hoodie of course, still to this day, but especially in the beginning, was like, oh, I've been on overtime potentially before. So it was a badge of like, I'm an athlete. And so now you could not just discard our packaging, you could actually put it on your backpack, you could wear it. And one sort of, you have your own KPIs in terms of measuring effectiveness. A mom had texted me the other day and said JT's credential was stolen at his basketball event and he's really sad. And I was like, you know what, if people are stealing our free insert, then it's actually somewhat creative. And look, I just think it's really different. Awesome. And we've always tried to kind of level up in that area and keep that thing going. So this has been a new addition, but honestly, as in everything we try and do, it's just pretty insight driven.
I gotta get some gear now.
We'll send you guys some for your next pod.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Thank you.
Chew on This is sponsored by.
Biggest D2C event is coming back to San Diego this September. We're talking about Commerce Roundtable San Diego. Last year, it was the place to be. It's 2 days filled with killer keynotes, live podcasts, interactive workshops, and what we love about this event is the fact that it's not your typical stuffy corporate nonsense. The vibes are high, the content was incredible, and the food was actually great. We go to a lot of events, we know it's hard to nail that. This year, they're bringing it bigger and better with an awesome venue right on the San Diego Bay. The lineup is getting stacked with experts from Yeezy, Podium, Milk Bar, Nude, Common Thread Collective, and the operators who are returning for round 2. Commerce Roundtable San Diego is the can't miss event of the year, so get your tickets now before they sell out. Last year, there was a 200-person waitlist and the FOMO was real. We've got a special offer for our listeners. Register at commerceroundtable.com and get 20% off with code OBVI20. We'll see you there.
Now, let's get back to the episode. If you look at kind of the going deeper into the world of commerce, right? When you look at just the world of like apparel and merch for a minute, right? There's an element to, retention that becomes somewhat tied to like, obviously you want to buy more of something you love, but then you also sometimes want to wait for the right style, the right, colorway or whatever it may be. How do you guys go about balancing SKU development, product development, and how much of the consumers are involved in helping with that?
Yeah. First part of your question, I would say in terms of balance, we have none. We just go. And our SKU count is actually quite large because now I would say roughly 40% of our overall business on the apparel and consumer product side is youth apparel. And so we're very much in the kids game or little brother, little sister, right? And so that doubles your SKU count because typically everything we're doing in adults, we're taking down into kids.
Got it.
SpongeBob as an example, right? All the shorts or tees or hoodies you saw, we're bringing down into kids. The other part of retention or new customer acquisition, a lot of the thinking behind that right now and the success behind that has just been purely category expansion. So we were tees and hoodies in the first year or two. Now we're a mesh shorts brand all the way through. The louder the AOP or all over pattern, the better. And we're continuing to we're selling thousands and thousands of socks now as well. And so I think category expansion has been key. As of 2 months ago, we're now in the performance apparel game. So much of our audience wanted compression short sleeve shirts, some underwear. We have been doing PSD underwear and we still are, but we were getting requests and asks for like, when are you guys coming out with your own compression line? And that really, it just became so overwhelming, the demand, and knowing on our website, the most searched word without any response was compression. And so just taking some of those insights, we have now went full into the product development side on performance apparel and compression.
Very cool.
And we think there's a bigger opportunity there. And then your second part of the question, which I think was like, how often do you talk to your consumers or how much are you kind of in the mix with them? It's a big pride point for us, as it is on the social side too. But we try and work with them as much as possible. I also have the luxury in my role of speaking to 80 athletes on a given day, or being in a text group with certain OTE team members who are like super into fashion or super into streetwear. And so I pull them a lot on our designs. We have an amazing design team. They also have a diverse set of backgrounds, which I think come from streetwear, come from sports, come from beauty, and all of those things kind of working together make us more distinguishable. It's such a crowded space. It's hard to be super distinguishable. There's a million mesh shorts brands now. And so I think a lot of that stuff has helped, even into the sense where, you know, we have our own OTE teams, right? They're basically named to be like a streetwear brand versus like the Miami Heat. And so the Cold Hearts is one of the more popular merch selling teams at OTE. We work with the players all the time, and we don't necessarily make fan wear. We make streetwear for them. And that's how the team apparel looks versus like just going to get a Fanatics sports tee. No offense to Fanatics, or like what they don't design what they produce, but you know what I mean, right? Yeah.
You guys have a lot of drops. So how much of your store is actually evergreen products that are kind of always there versus your drops, which are obviously only there for a limited time?
20 to 25% is evergreen, or call it core, and that we call Overtime Classics. So the Overtime Classic hoodie, Classic tee, and just your core mesh shorts. That's been about 20 to 25% of the business. We do deliver new color updates on a monthly or quarterly basis there, but then we're heavily in on the drop model because that's where we have the most consumer response. They want newness. They want to go back to the website a week or 2 weeks later and see completely new product. And so we have like 75% of our business now just with new graphic assortments, a new story, a new capsule collection, or now most importantly, a new collaboration.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's something we've always struggled with, and we did a lot of SKU rationalization. So we always had, a lot of SKUs on the website. Yeah. But then, and we were doing the drop model as well, but it never made sense for us to have as many evergreen SKUs as we did on the website because we were making most of our money on the drops.
Yeah.
So we ended up kind of rationalizing. We have, some evergreen stuff that's always there, but flavor drops over and over and over again. But I completely agree.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. You gotta just test and learn. Now that we have a significant youth business, we have a lot of moms in our customer service inquiries, and they don't understand that this short sold out and isn't coming back. When is it being restocked? And I'm like, it's not. And that's the point. But to them, they're not understanding of like the hype model or the drop model that we've sort of been kind of educated from. And so in some cases, like, look, if it's overwhelming, especially on the youth short side, like we should do a restock of this design because it hit. We might consider it, but for the most part, we don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Like people are already asking me, most of the SpongeBob styles are sold out. Are we restocking it? And we're like, we're not. Yeah, that's the point.
No, it makes complete sense. In terms of like when you look at, you guys are selling online, is there a world of retail or marketplaces? And when you look at typical apparel brands or merch brands on the regular e-commerce side, where it doesn't have maybe this other overlaying brand on top of it, the typical journey of building your e-commerce business and then let's go to retail, let's go to marketplaces, let's get our brand in front of more places, has that been on the roadmap in any case, or would that not make sense? Or
it's on the roadmap. Okay. Yeah. So what I can tell you now is past 2 years we built the arena in Atlanta. We have a store in the arena. It's been a test ground. It's really focused on our team assortments for OTE and not necessarily our Overtime core business, which is still the significant lion's share of apparel sales. But we're opening a store outside the arena in Atlanta in 2025. Nice. And so right now we're truly just conceptualizing what should that store mean? How do we make it an experience? What is somewhat of the, call it experiential aspects of the store that makes it a hangout and makes it different from the website, different from the journey that you might have elsewhere. And so that's a big part of the thinking right now. There's a lot of angles we could take. And so, there's tons of brands with a good coffee shop inside. And so what could that mean for us? Obviously coffee could be not our lane, of course, but I'm thinking about a lot of that stuff right now. And I'm also looking at what are the key zip codes where we're shipping a lot of product and we should have a store. And I kind of believe in malls again too. So I'm thinking about that as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Can you share some just challenges you faced, maybe just in the last year to 2 years? I know before that, COVID was always a little wonky for every type of business, but especially post-COVID, I'm curious, did you guys have to deal with certain challenges a certain way? And maybe what are some of those big rocks that are still tougher obstacles to move?
The biggest challenge that we've had in the journey, I would say, has been our 3PL partner. So our fulfillment center, who's packing and shipping your orders, especially with our Q4 peak. We've definitely made some bad choices in terms of who we chose to partner with. And it's been a learning experience for all of us. And I would say across the board, everyone I talk to that owns a brand, that owns a successful brand, whether they're shipping hoodies or protein powder or beauty makeup, no one loves their 3PL, you know? No one loves them, but you just want someone that's reliable, that's shipping on time, that's hitting.
The bar is low.
The bar is low. The bar is low. And so that's been the biggest. I inherited a bit of a mess when I started at Overtime, but then also created a couple new ones as well. And so that's been the biggest challenge overall. And there has been so much private equity money in terms of like new 3PLs that start and have just been like trying to get business. And a lot of them just haven't figured it out with the e-commerce boom. And of course you're chasing some opportunity, but I would really suss out your 3PL partner. That's the best advice I could give anyone, because look, you could have the hottest brand in the world, but if you can't ship on time or, you know, of course some brands like to do the pre-order model so you don't take on the inventory risk, but that's fine if that's your thing and you have the brand strength to do that. But yeah, that's probably been the biggest challenge. And then sometimes just picking our spots. We've tried to, you know, push design a little forward in some cases, and then you're like, let's actually bring this back a bit. But that's all part of the testing and learning process. Like, you're never going to have 100% this product hit, right?
Right. 100%. I think that's one of the biggest challenges anybody faces is their 3PL. I feel like that's what most brands say. Yeah. How did COVID affect you guys, or did it help? Did it not help? I'm assuming it helped.
It helped. It helped. I mean, I hate to say COVID helped anything, but our e-commerce business surged as did many others. Right. And someone sent me a picture. Our COO sent me a selfie of the two of us from 4 years ago today. I guess the iPhone gave him the reminder, and we're both in Overtime masks. And I go, those were dark times when masks were our #1 seller on our website, because we jumped into that game as many others did, and we started doing like fun prints on masks. Oh wow! And I was like, when that was the #1 seller on our site, that was a sad time. That was a sad time.
Margins are probably great.
Margins were great on masks, but at the end of the day, like, that's not what you want to be in the business of doing. Right. And so, you know, the thing I'm most grateful for, there was a lot of course correction, right, that you heard about or read about, where brands then came back to reality in that big e-commerce swing. Right. We didn't experience, like, we just kept growing. Wow. And so for me, that was great, you know, and incredible. And we're seeing a lot of, you know, our return customer rate's amazing. And so that was the biggest thing. Like, of course we started selling a ton of masks, but at the end of the day, we kept the growth going year over year.
That's cool. I have one question which we deal with internally a decent amount, is the world of like brand versus performance, right? So it's Ankit's obviously our chief brand officer as well. And then we have a CMO and us three are co-founders. And I think it's always interesting to see the push and pull between brand and then performance. I'd love to get your take on it, and what does that world look like for you when you're sitting on the brand side, but you're also, it looks like you're very dialed into performance as well. But do you have certain challenges or even certain tips and things how to get through brand and performance at the same time?
Well, we always try and do some type of, what does Gary Vee call it? Like brand performance marketing or something like that. I forget. But actually the person who leads all of our paid media approach is ex-Vayner. So that's why I say that. Her name's Tamara. She's brilliant on that front, and has done an incredible job of also just leaning into the organization cross-functionally for all the different parts where paid can be affected. Yeah. And look, we also have like this internal rift where a lot of our business comes from paid media, not just from selling Overtime apparel, but also we have to do that for advertisers with us. And at the same time, we want to be the most engaged sports brand on social media. We want to have the most views, the most shares, all of those main metrics. And the social team prides themselves on all that incredible work. And then you throw in some branded content posts and you're like, all those numbers really tanked. Yep. And so we're constantly tinkering, and we want to make sure it shows up authentic. We'll never take someone's commercial, let's call it, like a brand's commercial, and post it on our own channels, right? We always do it in a way that's either told through one of our influencers or told in a way that makes sense for how Overtime users are meant to and understood how to consume our content. And so we're constantly tinkering with that. Even the other day, we were having a conversation. I don't know if this is so true or not, and hopefully it's not, but on TikTok Shop, if you tag a product, it just tanks the overall views and the For You algorithm and whatnot. And that doesn't make much sense to me, because I thought TikTok was trying to push TikTok Shop so much. And why would they do that to themselves? So those are the things we were just discussing internally as an example. And we just launched sneakers on our website, right? Adidas sneakers. And we're just a footwear stockist now. And so we have Overtime kicks. You tag a product, and we thought this post could explode, but then maybe it doesn't because of that. And so we're kind of at the will of the big machine in some ways for that, but constantly always trying to think what's the best way to kind of have the balancing act.
Makes sense.
I think what's great for you guys is you have this big organic presence where brand marketing can truly shine, and you're not stepping on each other's toes, because for us, a lot of it is performance. When you have a huge organic engine where, you know, the brand team and the brand marketers can kind of, that's their own thing, they're not going to get so involved in performance where performance is then suffering.
For sure. And half the time I'm also fortunate, but it's by design. I will have two really cool people like yourselves sitting here doing a pod that we cut up for TikTok, and they're wearing an O right on their hoodie. And they're not talking about it. They're talking about who's better, LeBron or MJ or whatever the case may be. And then that video gets shared by a million other people, and our hoodie and our logo is right there.
That's right.
You know,
100%.
That's a great point. To go a little bit deeper onto the content side of things, when you look at content from the days of when it was like Instagram, and before even Reels came out, it was kind of like just Instagram For You page, right, at that time. Then you had like the development of Reels, and now TikTok, right? How do you guys adapt to the different platforms? And is it just like, hey, whatever comes, you just need to be on there? And then how are you like looking at the audiences for different platforms? So I'm curious, like, is your strategy for Facebook, right, different from your strategy from Snapchat, right? Because I know you guys have a channel on there.
Yeah, we have a few.
I think I'm subscribed to it. And then I think you have a different strategy for TikTok. Talk me through that a little bit, because I think the audiences on each platforms are different. But I'm sure you guys have a different way of looking at that.
Yeah, we definitely have a different strategy for each platform. Some have similarities and overlap, and some, this would work on Instagram, this would never work on TikTok. Or you're starting to see TikTok rewards you if you put an image first that then is like a carousel, right? So we go through those motions. First and foremost, we try and be first movers, you know, and that's, we have an agile team. We're very much a test and learn organization, and don't necessarily plan everything out, but plan as you go.
Got it.
And I always use this anecdote a lot of ways, but Overtime Mikey, who's a content creator and influencer, he also runs Overtime Kicks. And that was first only started on TikTok and not Instagram. He had to crack video format of sneaker storytelling first. And because no one else was doing it, it was just like sneaker news and nice kicks on Instagram, which doing a great job, but no one was doing it in a way in which video was the primary format. And so he crushed that. It's the largest sneaker account on TikTok. Now let's bring it over to Instagram. We could do some of the similar formats that have really worked, but also just do some of the native Instagram formats that you know are tried and true. And so we do a lot of that. We've been now thinking a lot and trying to be more outside the box, in the sense that we kind of created this challenge to ourselves, because we were born off the premise that Gen Z doesn't watch full games. Or David Stern, one of our early investors, the late David Stern, said if anything I could do to get everyone to watch the first 3 quarters of a game and not just tune into the fourth quarter. And so here we are with our own league trying to get people to watch all 4 quarters. So one of the ways in which we try to make some sense out of that is our fourth quarter is actually 12 minutes and our first 3 quarters are 8, but we could just change the rules. However, to go back to your question, really what we've tried to do is think about channel surfing in the new age of all of these platforms. And so you might go on TikTok now and you could turn your phone horizontally and fully watch our broadcasted game in high def and high spec, just like how our broadcast viewers on Prime Video on their TV would watch it. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, one of our influencers might go on their Instagram broadcast channel. You'd get that notification, and they're also pushing the game as well. So now the channel surfing is between not only the platforms, but the creators and all the channels in which we have. And that might keep you around to watch our game full force versus might lose you for a little bit, or you might tune in and tune out. And not anyone else from a true traditional sports broadcasting perspective does that or can do that, more or less.
So I think it'd be awesome to talk a little bit more on, when you look at the market and how to get your audience captured in to not just your brand and your content, but also when you want somebody, when you guys post, to say, hey, I'm gonna go and watch this content because I'm consumed to it. What are some of the must do's or must don'ts when it comes to building content for particular audiences?
We've definitely done a great job of. Most of our social posts have a great hook or a great entry into this has my attention. I need to see more, swipe more, consume more, or comment or share. Yeah. Ideally, we're looking at a lot of shares now as a new sort of KPI. And I think Instagram and Massimo had just done an interview or an article about how he's focusing more on shares and even showing that as like a new like. Yeah. And so we're thinking about that too, because we are at the will of those platforms sometimes. But also, we always try and have everything vertical and have it ready for the video format. I still see brands doing horizontal, and not only from a photography standpoint, but video standpoint too. And I think we're just always looking at what our audience is already doing. And as an example that's recent for us is we just launched our own performance and compression apparel. And I could have taken the route of let's do an amazing Nike campaign that's high polished, high budget, and all of the things, famous athlete that And, of course, we don't have that type of budget and we're not that big. And also some of those videos actually don't really perform well on social. And so what we did notice is essentially all of our audience and Gen Z does a nice photo dump. And so we just decided to take a big group of, athletes that we work with and athletes that we have a connection to, from 1,000 followers to hundreds of thousands of followers, nice group. And they all just posted a photo dump aesthetic on launch day.
What's a photo dump?
Just 20 photos, 10 photos on a post. Oh, wow. And, some of it's in a bodega, some of it's actually playing basketball, some of it's a selfie, some of it's your phone on the table or your food on the table.
Random stuff.
Just random. Oh, wow. That's what they're doing these days. Yeah. And so that has been our approach and our strategy. And it feels like an authentic post that's innate to your friend versus a brand. And I think that's just things that we're always constantly trying to think about and do. Yeah. And so we did that for the launch of our performance apparel, and it did really well. And so I think a lot of brands are always thinking I got to do a commercial sometimes, or we're still thinking in this above the line campaign moment. And we are thinking about how is this content fast, consumable, and gets the message across in the least amount of time possible, and still leaves you thinking about the brand. And of course, that also depends on, are we hitting you on Instagram or TikTok? We also have a big SMS strategy for all of our e-commerce purchasers and things like that. So just trying to meet you where you already are.
Yeah, that's really smart. I'm glad you mentioned just taking these strategies that are just so random maybe or not have tons of data or tons of years of oh, this is how you should do it, because I think we're just seeing more and more of that, even us, right? When we started running ads on Facebook, and we spent anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 a day on Facebook ads, right? There were ads that we started testing that wouldn't even show the product on the ad.
Yeah.
And it was just about like, hey, this product can do this, this, and this, but we won't even show the product, and you won't see it till you get to the landing page. And that's some of our best converting ads now, right? We have a few ads that are like AI generated, that where we're showing like a before and after of a strawberry looking jacked versus not jacked.
Yeah, it'll look like a Disney commercial.
Yeah, and it's like our top performer of the week, you know.
Really?
And we hate that. I hate that.
That's funny.
And I think that's the part that's like, it's so important here is like, don't just follow the norm. Otherwise, like these platforms are somewhat rewarding the people that are doing things against the grain,
For sure.
even though they want you to like fit into this algorithm. I somebody had some quote is like, the algorithm is the worst thing that happened to creativity, because you think that you need to fit into the algorithm, but then you'll just run amongst the masses. But like if you go a little bit against the grain and try and topple the algorithm, that's where you can kind of break it.
Yeah. Mischief's done a good job of that with some
Yeah.
of their experiential like wild products. Or look, we've had so much conversation around like YouTube cover art and how important that is. Or I think Netflix now, if like I'm super into rom-coms and you're super into action movies, like we see the tiles differently for the same movie, and it's unique and personalized to you. So we often think about that too, and just the way in which we might do our own ads to make it feel like this is just a regular post that you might see from your friend.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
All right, before we leave, you can't leave without talking about the Knicks for a second. And we'll bring it back to this as well. But what the Knicks did by putting these 4 guys together from Villanova, right?
Cool.
And this all come back around. Do you think that there's a brand move there when they decided to do this, as in like this is going to get insane publicity? Because if they're successful with it, there's
They're not gonna be
you could do
successful with it.
documentaries, you
They
could do
won't
all
be
these
successful.
brand deals.
Yeah. I don't know if they actually had that level of thinking,
No?
like that deep of a
You don't
level
think
of
Leon
thinking.
cared?
And I don't know if, you know how there's always those debates and you don't know if it's true or not, like LeBron's really the coach or he's really the GM of the team and he's picking his players. I don't think Jalen Brunson's like that type of person that's saying, I want these guys, or this is like, get me that guy or else, you know?
Just his 3 best friends
happen
to come.
But it's cool. Like those are the moments of sports that you love. And honestly, to see the Knicks have a bit of a run, I don't think they'll go to the championship.
They
but,
won't win.
You know,
Let's cut it here.
Yeah. They won't win. It's not possible.
But you know, I'm all for the story. I live in the market, so I'm happy to go to the games. And look, it's just way more fun when you have your hometown team cooking. So I'm supportive.
100%. Cool.
Yeah, let's do it. So at the end of each episode, what we like to do is ask everyone to give one thing for the viewers or listeners to just chew on, just one takeaway, one piece of advice. You've given a lot today.
Okay.
But boil it down to one thing that whether it's somebody starting an e-commerce business or getting into content or learning about the world of sports, what's the one thing that they should take away and go do at home?
I think one of the things that I try and do a great job at and has rewarded me professionally is just being widely read and understanding that there's multiple answers to the same question. That's probably a good thing to do in life in general, but most of the inspiration or ideas that we do at Overtime actually don't come from sports, and we've never been a brand or a company that looks at the scoreboard or how many points that player scored. That's never been our storyline. And so I'm always constantly looking at like, what is the beauty category doing, or what is the entertainment and the movie side? If I know the most popular Gen Z show on Netflix is Wednesday, like we got to know about it and why, and maybe there's a crossover there. And so I think about that stuff probably most, and just try and be as widely read as possible. And of course, like you got to go deep in some areas and you got to know your shit, and you either do or make sure your team has a great vantage point on all your blind spots for sure. So that's awesome. That's been I don't know if that's great advice,
that's
but
great.
You know,
great.
It's worked for me.
Chew on
that. That's awesome.
If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.